This is the Average Guy Network, and you have found Home Gadget Geeks, show number 278, recorded on September 15th, 2016. Here in Home Gadget Geeks, we cover all the favorite tech gadgets that find their way into your home. News, reviews, product updates, and conversation, all for the average tech guy. I'm your host, Jim Collison, broadcasting live, and not really broadcasting live this week, although I'm broadcasting live right now, mostly just to get the intro done for this series of podcasts that'll be coming up over the next couple weeks. If you're a member of, if you've subscribed to our newsletter, or you've hung around the podcast network very long, you know, next couple weeks are a little sketchy for me on Thursdays, and so we will be, when we normally broadcast live. So I'll be putting into the feed some interviews that we did at Heartland Developer Conference just last week here in 2016. And some great interviews. I think you'll like them. There'll be 2 interviews each that are in there over the next couple of weeks. Just not available on Thursday nights. And so this is a great way of getting those, getting that content repurposed and to get it downstream. So we'll post those at regular intervals. They'll be available for you on the weekends, just like they normally are. And so hope you enjoy them. We'll remind you, Home Gadget Geeks is a part of the Geeks Network. If you find this show, you'll find the links to many other great podcasts out at thegeeksnetwork.com. Of course, this weekend, Home Server Show Meetup. And so if you're a Patreon supporter, or if you were doing Patreon for stickers, I should have sent most of them to our Australian listeners. I have a really hard time getting these there, guys, to be honest with you. And so I may not be able to do that. I've held back a couple just in case, but we are taking the rest of them there, and I'll be taking down that $3 pledge on Patreon. If you want to continue to support the show, just head out to theaverageguy.tv/support and click on the Patreon link, and that will get you there as well. We'll be changing around. We'll do some fun things with Patreon over the coming weeks and months as we head into Christmas, so we're looking forward to it. I'll remind you, as I close this part out, I won't put a closing in at the very end of the podcast. We'll just drop out with the last interview that we do. Just a couple reminders, though, for you. One is, if you want to contact me, send me an email, jim@theaverageguy.tv. You can find me on Twitter @jcollison. Don't forget that the AverageGuy.tv web hosting and both media and web hosting provided by and really some really great web hosting out at Maple Grove Partners. So head out to maplegrovepartners.com. Secure, reliable, fast, by people you know and you trust. Plans start as cheap as $10 a month. Great stuff. Head out to maplegrovepartners.com. We'll thank Roger out at WLMN Radio. We said last week that we always put this in at the end of the show, and I'm going to put it in at the beginning this week. If you're in Grafton, West Virginia, and you're listening, we'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, jim@theaverageguy.tv. If you catch this show on a regular basis, I know we broadcast in the mornings, Monday through Friday, so we'd love to hear from you. Again, jim@theaverageguy.tv. Always kind of fun to hear if that's anybody's listening to us out there in Grafton. And then, of course, don't forget, you can download and listen to this on our new app. And it's really not new, but the app is available for you out there. Head out to homegadgetgeeks.com. Big buttons to download that. Sponsored by LastPass, and we appreciate their sponsorship of the podcast to be able to do that. Again, homegadgetgeeks.com will get you there. For those of you who've been supporting us on Amazon, we appreciate that. Amazon, if you head out to theaverageguy.tv/Amazon, you support the network with your purchases out there. It doesn't cost you anymore, but it does. We make a few pennies off your purchase, and we appreciate that as well. If you haven't signed up for the newsletter, you got to do, maybe this is the week to get it done. Head out to theaverageguy.tv/newsletter, and there's a sign-up page right there. We're normally live on Thursday nights, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern. Not for the next couple weeks, but we'll have a regular podcast out for you over the weekend. We have Tarah Wheeler, who she's up first. She was the keynote and pretty great keynote speaker for this conference, and so I encourage you to listen to it. Maybe a little different than you're used to hearing. And so, every once in a while, I like to tweak the format some. And then Ryan Pendell, you know him from Silicon Prairie News. We've had him on a couple times, and he just brings a great update of what's going on at Silicon Prairie News. So those 2 for this week. We'll have more coming up over the next couple weeks. Thanks for staying around. Thanks for listening. Hope to meet some of you at the Home Server Show Meetup this weekend. So with that, we'll kick in the interviews. Thanks for listening. Jim Collison, we are live at Infotech 2016. I'm here with today's keynote speaker, Tarah Wheeler. And Tarah, you're apparently a big deal. You've got a book. You're a CEO.
There's no shirt.
So, all kinds of great stuff. Thanks for taking a few minutes to interview with me today. Let's just dive into who you are. If you give me kind of a little bit of background on the details you'd love to share with us.
Absolutely. I am a big fan of furry cat videos on the internet. I am the CEO of Fizment. I'm website securities are at Symantec. I'm the author of the Women in Tech book. I spend too much time on Twitter, I think, at this point. And
I've gotten into Twitter lately too.
A little bit of that, yeah. And I have an unfortunate soy latte habit at this point.
Addiction to coffee at this point. All those things you would expect from a girl geek. Is it okay to call it? Would you
call
consider
me a
yourself girl geek?
Too. Yeah, it's one way to put it. Sure. I think that that people who are inclusive and happy and want to provide this kind of opportunity for others to share messages, that we often need to be a little bit more forgiving, I think, of folks who. I got to say, I remember a story once when an older gentleman who had hired me to do a really great position said, he was on a call with me and he said, all right, well, now you gals just go on ahead and get done with that. Oh, I mean, girls, I mean, ladies, I mean, women, I mean, and I said, just don't call me late to dinner. It's fine.
Yeah.
He's a wonderful human being and working. And we need to be a little forgiving, I think, of people who are trying their hardest to be inclusive. And I like to do that. I like to reach out,
We're going to talk a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about that because we see a lot in our hiring too. We see a lot where we're trying to, I think the national average in computer science programs today in the United States is 7%. I think that's the latest ladies to men ratio. Yeah. We've had some great success in our internship programs at Gallup, and we get that in the 25-30% range. But
wow, that's spectacular.
We still have a long ways to go. We'll come back to that. You have done a lot of things, and I understand you're kind of a Star Trek aficionado. Is that
was that the roars of outrage from in there when I said something about how clearly Star Trek was superior to Star Wars? So someone was carrying a lightsaber around and I feel like there's a lightsaber brandishing statue we need to pull out.
Those are pretty brash words to say in a tech keynote from that standpoint. But you've done a lot of different tech things. If you look at your bio, what's been your favorite? I mean, of all the roles that you've done to date, and it can even be what you're doing right now, but what's been your favorite?
It's so hard to say. I think that the thing that I've loved the most is I feel like careers in technology don't have to be linear. And as a result, I've gotten a chance to do all manner of things that I love without necessarily having to wait in line to do them, which is a great experience.
Yeah. Well, you've done some incredible project management, right? When we think about tech projects and some of those things.
Well, just managing that book, I'll tell you, it's I joke with those ladies. Project managing 8 famous women in technology is quite the challenge.
How did you come to the point where you decided to write a book? What was that? How did that happen?
That's a great question. So there I was in 2014, and I had given yet another talk on here's how to get a job as a woman in technology, and here's what this is like. And finally, I just said, like 3 people came up to me and said, have you considered doing a book? And I was like, finally, I got to do this. So if I just write the book, then everyone will ask me my advice and I'll just hand them the book and I'll never have to talk about it ever again. Instead, the only thing that happens is now I have to boil it down into 4 easy blog posts for just everybody. And I was like, all right,
I wrote a whole book.
I failed.
Can you just read the book? Right, it's kind of like maybe you should podcast the book so people can.
Oh my gosh!
Have you thought about doing that, or maybe you've done
it? There's the audiobook is out on Audible, so yeah, that I think is what they call a podcast these days. Yeah,
well, now the audiobook is word for word. Have you thought about breaking the book down into a podcast series where you kind of go beyond, take chapters and maybe you do 6 podcasts on the chapters that are more informal? People love
that is a really great idea.
Oh, good.
I'm going to steal that from you.
Oh, totally. I'll give you my card when I'm done. We can talk about this. But
do you want to interview me through all of them?
I would actually do that for you. So it would be a ton of fun, especially because this is a really important topic to us, women in tech. Are we making progress at this point? Is it getting better out there? I mentioned 7%. We want that to be 50. We're working really, really hard to go 50-50. We're doing all kinds of things. But in your opinion, are we making progress nationally?
I'm going to challenge you on that. We want it to be 50. First, it's tough to say because we've seen that the high point of women in technology was 1984 with 38% of women getting degrees in computer science. And I think it was a couple of years ago it dropped to 11. You're saying last year it went down to 7.
7, I think, is what the last one I heard.
The last one you heard, exactly. So clearly the problem's getting worse and not better. And yet it's not necessarily that we want to see gender equality in technology. It's only that we want to see women not having to drop out in increasing numbers at each point in their career. careers
Yeah.
based on challenges faced by family life, by the structure of technology companies.
Yeah.
I like to often say the problem that technology has is not really a woman problem. It's a primary caregiver problem. And while women are still taking over the majority of the work at home in terms of kids and house and everything like that, it's a real challenge to try to do this kind of a career.
Yeah.
So, and the interesting and the good news, the positive part about all this is that the millennial generation, those under 30, men are now expected and expecting, crucially, to take over at least half of the house and childcare work. So that's extraordinary to hear. And it also means managers now need to start thinking about the fact that it's going to be more men who are requesting family leave.
Yep.
So
yeah.
it's a
No,
new
we see
workforce
that.
coming in.
We're starting to see that now, and I think becoming very important. I deal with more of the high school, college. We have a high school and college internship program, and giving equal opportunities. And so it's one of the we also see at that level, especially in high school. One of the premises, I don't know in the book if you deal with it at all, but we see a lot of girls dropping out in junior high.
Yes.
And so we're losing them, right? But we lose them even before we get started.
Right.
We're starting to target that with a specific program at Gallup that will bring these kids in and hopefully change that. We find transportation, especially in the inner city or in the areas of low income is a problem. Do you guys see anything in the work that you've done? We've talked about family life. Now that's kind of post-college or even in that age kind of standpoint. Do you see any other challenges in between maybe that 8th grade or those 7th and 8th grade years in high school? Can you talk a little bit about what do you see?
You've really put your finger on it right there. It's that there are multiple challenges, and over time, it's just a higher attrition rate for women. We see them drop out at about twice the rate as men do at each major point in their journey towards technology in elementary school, in junior high school, in high school, when they go into college, when they graduate with a computer science degree. There's a big break point in women who graduate with computer science degrees who actually go into technical work. Many of them go into meta or paratechnical work like project management, digital marketing. They have those skill sets, but they're often not as welcomed into the engineering field. So that's a major break point there. We also see that next major break point at about 35 when it's really a choice in that moment. Are you going to be focusing on your family or your career? And it's really unfortunate to see a lack of support for that. One of the major suggestions that I think we in the field have really been working on is when we see paid family leave, paid parental leave in the United States become federal in nature, I think we're going to see a big change at that point.
Yeah. What about when we think about high school, college? You made a statement just a minute ago about you said engineering. You used that word, and then they're beginning to drop out. Anything from an enterprise perspective as we think about how business? Because I think my premise is that the enterprise should own the internship world. When we think about both high school and college, it's our job to make sure that these students are ready to go and ready to be employed. We have the work. We know what they need to do. It's silly if we're going to expect our universities to do this for us. So what kind of advice would you give to me with that premise? And if we were going to change that at the high school and college level, what kind of advice would you give to me as an enterprise or maybe something I could do different?
I'm going to call out to something I was just talking about in my keynote over there, which was the fact that sometimes we need to see the change that's out there before we believe that we can actually accomplish it. And so you as an enterprise can absolutely demonstrate that by promoting, by hiring women leaders in your field, and by showing the women who are showing up in high school and collegiate internship programs that you do hire and promote internally women technical leaders inside your company. And I remember thinking, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, it was such a great moment seeing in the 7th season of Star Trek The Next Generation, the first time that Deanna Troi gets to stop wearing the cutie shirts and puts on the real uniform for the first time, goes through the training to become a bridge officer and sits her first watch, and just sitting down in that captain's chair for the first time. I mean, I remember looking at that and going, maybe I could try that too. And I think a lot of women really have that moment when they see women achieving that. They just think to themselves, that's an option I don't think I realized existed for me. Oh,
it's a good point.
Show
I think,
them
I kind of prove it is what you're saying. At Gallup, both our VPs of software and MIS are women.
Well, you're badass.
And so there's a great opportunity there. We are also finding with the ladies that we bring in at the high school level, many of them come in not thinking computer science is a option, and they leave amazingly thinking computer science is an option. We're having some great success. I remember our very first year of the high school program, we had a gal, we asked him, what do you think you'll do? And she said, biology or something like that. And she ended up going in computer science, and then Google stole her away from me, and she's doing some software development.
They do that every once in a while.
Google. So from a book perspective, then how, does this change anything for you? I mean, is writing the book, publishing it, being a published author, I assume it's available on Amazon and all the great places
Audible,
you can buy it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Does this change anything for you? Has it opened any new doors? Has it created credibility or got you speaking in areas you couldn't speak before?
I already was speaking in these areas. I'm going to say that mostly what I see people telling me is that it's helped to do the same thing that moment in season 7 of Next Gen did for me, which is just open their eyes to the fact that people have different stories. This isn't just me writing this. This is autobiographical chapters interspersed with advice. So there's 7 other women who also write an autobiographical essay. They tell about what it's like to be them.
Yeah.
And the essays that have a big impact on people are the ones they can most closely relate to. Notably, really importantly, only 2 out of the 8 women who write in this book have computer science degrees. So the important thing to remember is that technology is available through a lot of doors. There's a lot of doors into and out of this career, and it doesn't have to be linear. So I had that reinforced in my own mind and my ability to teach that, I think. And so many women reach out and they say, it was amazing reading Katie's essay and finding out what it's like to have a baby while doing a tech contract. Or it's inspiring reading Brianna's essay and understanding what it's like to be attacked by Gamergate and still come through with a great and award-winning game that she designed and put out there into the world. It's wonderful to read that, to hear about these stories that women are telling about what it's like to be in technology. And all of a sudden, they're having those eye-opening moments of, hey, my life hasn't followed a traditional path, and I don't have a scholarship to Stanford or MIT, but I could do this.
Yeah.
That's the greatest moment.
That's so good, because I think there's so much pressure in the Silicon Valley to have to go to Berkeley or to go to Stanford or to go to USC, and you have to have this certain pedigree set up to be able to do it. And
I think so.
And yet we hire computer science, or we hire software developers who come out of math programs.
Absolutely.
I've hired them out of English programs before. They find technology late in their college career, right? And they think, hey, this could be really awesome. And I think we need to start thinking as an enterprise outside the box that, hey, I don't have to be a darling of the Silicon Valley. I don't have to come out of Austin or Boston. This is something I can do in Des Moines or in Omaha, Nebraska.
Absolutely.
And Omaha has a great startup community here that's doing pretty well and thriving.
I heard about it. I'm surprised I got a chance to meet so many great people.
No, it's Omaha's, I think, the best kept secret in the United States when we think about cost of living, availability to tech. And availability of just great people. I just think Omaha creates great people here. So we have a great opportunity in that as well. Let's shift gears a little bit, talk a little bit about security, because I know that's a big deal for you, right? Real passion for you. As a tech guy and as a blogger and podcaster, I'm really worried about where we're headed as an industry around security. Can you calm those fears, or is it really as bad as we think? When we think about information security, people getting their sites hacked, information, email servers, right? All this crazy stuff that's going on right now. How do you approach this? Should I be worried, or is everything okay?
Well, I think that everyone has a responsibility to try to make the best decision they possibly can. And that's with the information that they have. There's a responsibility that companies have to make sure that people know what is and isn't being done with their data, where it's going, who it's being sold to, because it's often not the company that you gave your data to that ends up getting hacked. It's the third party you didn't know about and didn't pay attention to in the TOS. Now, on a general kind of holistic nature, the information security is an extraordinary part of technology. It's the most exciting part of it to me personally. I think that it's the place that you find the crazy people and the dreamers right now trying to break things and figure out how they work. And one of the things I think I find most of all in InfoSec is people with a deep passion for protecting other people, for trying to figure out how the system works and making sure that the little guy isn't getting hurt. Now, those are the white hat hackers. There are absolutely people out there that are bad and will steal your information. I like to think that there's this great quote from Sherlock season 2, the BBC one, where Benedict Cumberbatch is facing down James Moriarty. And he says, I may be on the side of the angels, but don't ever mistake me for being one of them. I think that's kind of a commonality among a lot of people. And they have these great minds that are focused on making sure that people are safe. And sometimes they come about it through a little bit of an awkward angle on occasion. I think that the entire industry is the greatest thing I've ever discovered. I love being part of it. And I think that the public image of white hat hackers needs a little bit of a rehabilitation, given the passion that most of the people I know and the intelligence that most of the people I know bring to protecting people that don't have their skill set.
We need some good guys.
Yeah, we do. There's a lot of them out there.
Our attack surfaces continue to get larger
Yes,
as
they
we
do.
think about what's on our phone.
A little bit.
What kind of, when you're talking to the average guy
Sure.
or gal, what kind of
Mhm.
advice do you give them to kind of reduce that? Because we'll never get a zero, we'll never get
No, we will
a
not.
zero footprint, right?
Right.
There'll always be some kind of attack
Sure.
surface.
Mhm.
What kind of advice do you give them?
Well, there's the crazy option. You can air gap all of your computers. You can turn off all your devices and kill everything.
Right.
The truth is that's not realistic, right? We interact with other people. And just as when you're interacting with other people in relationships, opening yourself up means you have a chance to get hurt, but that's how you get the value out of being part of a human community.
Right.
You know, opening yourself up to the information community means that you have that increased attack surface. You can be hurt. The number one thing I actually tell people who are super non-technical to do is just set a passcode on your phone. And I don't care if it's 1111. Right? That is still an order of magnitude beyond the security that you previously had.
Mhm.
And that helps so much, especially, you know, if it's grandma, if it's somebody, you know, grandma and grandpa call you up and say, hey kiddo, how do I secure my phone? I'm scared of all these hackers. Set a passcode is really what it is. And make sure that, and the next step beyond that, of course, is use a password manager. Don't use the same password on every site.
Yeah.
Those are the two biggest things that can stop you from most major hacks that aren't directed at you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think be smart about what you're doing. Careful how you're connecting to Wi-Fi networks in various areas, right? I mean, there's some things you can do, some security you can do that's getting better. Do you see it getting better, or do you see it getting worse in these realms?
Well, I think that there's a lot more popular media out now that is kind of demystifying the nature of information security as a community and what normal human beings can do to protect themselves. I happen to love the show Mr. Robot, and I had
a lot of people like that show.
It's a pretty good show.
It's a good show.
I was involved with something that they did in Tribeca. It was a lot of fun, and I think that it's a great way to look at how the mind of people that are part of this community think, while at the same time being super sensationalized.
Yeah.
I think that normal human beings who see this community are often taken aback or even put off by kind of the craziness and the dress and the mohawks and the piercings, and they should absolutely recognize that there are good guys out there, and we are doing the best that we possibly can to build a safer world using the best tools we have now, that we're inventing more every day.
Yeah. I get an opportunity. I record a podcast called Cyber Frontiers, and
Killer.
I have some students that work at the University of Maryland in the DC area. We talk about this cyber security, cyber defense all the time.
There,
amazing. And those are some of the good guys.
Yes, they are.
So even in college, we are starting to see hopefully more and more of these good guys coming forward. What's the future of Tarah look like? Where do you hope to be next 3 to 5 years? What's on the horizon for you?
Wait, are we interviewing me for a job right about now?
Sure. Hey, if that's an option, let's do that. Jamie, you want to get over here?
all I really want right now is like my latte and my cat.
Yes. And cat or cat videos.
Either videos,
either one work. Okay.
Exactly.
All right.
So I think what I'm going to be trying to do is just continue to push information out there to the best of my ability. It's when we are at this point in our careers, I think one thing that really goes lacking in almost every field in technology is an understanding of how to get an engineer to manage other engineers. I see a deficit of leadership training in the industry. That includes information security.
Okay.
Absolutely. How do you go from being someone who can do penetration testing to someone who manages penetration testers? How do you manage a crew of people who are putting a website together if you yourself have never been a developer? And yet at the same time, if you were a developer, who trains you to be a manager? So that's a question I'm really interested in right now.
No, that's a great question. That's not one I expected, and not one I'm hearing very often in the sense of, we have an information security problem.
Yes.
And we've got a lot of great people on the ground, but the future is really in the leadership of that, and strong leaders and strong management and
strong vision about what can and can't solve problems.
Yeah. No, very good. Women in Tech is your book. Is there going to be a follow-up to this, or you can tell some stories? I mean, certainly there's new stories. When did you publish this? How long ago?
This was, I think 5 months ago. I think was the launch date
of it.
It's
fairly new out there.
And now what actually happened was I had several of these women lined up in advance. Then we ran the Kickstarter, which is apparently it was the largest.
Oh, it's Kickstarter book?
It was the large. We set a record for anthologies, I think.
Yeah.
It was quite extraordinary. And Over the course of that Kickstarter, there were hundreds of women who actually emailed me asking, do you want me to be part of this book? And we finally actually turned it into a Medium channel called Stories from Women in Tech. So anyone who would love to tell your story, who wants to get that pushed out there, just tell a story about how you got into technology, what you love and what you don't love. And if you'd love to, just reach out to me on Twitter. I'm at Tarah, Tarah. It's my first name.
You got at Tarah?
Absolutely.
On Twitter? How long have you been on Twitter?
A while.
Since the beginning?
A little bit.
Pretty close.
A little bit.
To it. Well, that's very cool. Who's the book for? Who'd you write this book? At the end of the day, who's your target audience, and who should pick this up? I mean, do I give this to my high school girls?
Yeah,
Who gets it?
This is really aimed at the high school through the director level for women in technology.
Okay.
While it's applicable to everyone, and I've heard girls as young as 8 emailing me, and I got to tell you right now, it's the dads emailing me and telling me, I gave this book to my daughter, and she's trying to program on the computer, and I'll be sobbing over my keyboard when I read those.
Yeah.
But this is really aimed especially at those women who aren't sure whether or not they want to get into technology, and the women who aren't sure if they want to get out of technology. It's probably the best way to put it.
Okay. No, I would think, as I think about the ladies who joined me in high school, this would probably be a nice primer for them, something to consider as they start working through it. We'll look for will the next one be called Women in Tech 2.0? That's such a bad thing to say.
Well,
right?
It's funny. Angie Chang actually was the founder of Women 2.0, the organization, and she wrote the Crusader chapter in here, which is really awesome.
Yeah.
So I think I can safely say that there's something else coming out sometime soon. So
exciting.
Absolutely.
Well, we'll be excited to follow this a little bit. Thanks for coming to Omaha and being a part of. If nobody has thanked you yet, I'm sure you've gotten a lot. But and again, some great comments coming out of the keynote. A good reason to be here at Heartland Developer Conference every single year. Tara, thank you for being a part of the interview. I appreciate it. Jim Collison, we're live from the Heartland Developer Conference here 2016. I'm here with Ryan Pendell. And Ryan, good to podcast with you face to face.
Yeah.
I think the last time we podcasted was on a Silicon Prairie News Minute.
Yeah.
Which we've kind of let just go, I think.
Yeah.
At this point,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, I think it was really good to do. I think there's so much news. There's so much stuff that's happening. So I think it's always worthwhile.
A good experiment, I think, for us. This is a little bit maybe of an experiment in the small business as well, that we thought we might have something. We gave it a try. I think at its best, we had a couple hundred subscribed to it, which is actually well above a regular, any average podcaster. Both you and I, we got busy. Infotech came up, and we just kind of thought, well, from a time standpoint, it's tough to keep it up. And so we pivoted, we changed, we kind of pivoted to nothing at this point. But that's because Silicon Prairie News, there's a lot going on, right? I think between Infotech and Heartland Developer Conference. Can you give me a little update on what's going on with Silicon Prairie News? What kind of things are happening? I know you guys continue to have great startup news, and I've shared a bunch of it on Facebook.
Yeah, we're just continuing to do a lot of startup profiles. There's so many great companies. We have a massive backlog of lists of companies that we haven't gotten to yet that we want to profile that are doing really interesting stuff. I think that as a whole, the regional startup community continues to mature. And so I think what's most exciting is to see companies where you have people that were in startups and now they're out of a startup, but now they're starting a new startup, starting another company, or I think a lot of the cool stuff, like what's happening with, Benezant's becoming Wex and all that kind of stuff is really exciting.
Yeah.
I think that the whole region just continues to explode and I think it's just really, really exciting.
It's both here and in Lincoln. Des Moines continues to grow nicely. I think Kansas City still humming along. I'm hearing some rumblings in St. Louis as well. And so you feel like it's really coming along and growing in those markets?
And I think what's neat is seeing the way in which the region itself becomes a platform. So you have, a company will maybe be based in Lincoln, but then they expand to Omaha, they expand to Kansas City. Today we did a story on Deal Any Day out of Lincoln, and they're based in Lincoln, but they have a national team. They have people from all over the country that work for them, and they've expanded Omaha and Des Moines and Kansas City, and they're, so they kind of have this both a talent pool and a user base are kind of built into the region. I think it's always exciting to see that stuff where people kind of cross those borders.
Yeah, it seems like the startup culture community, it's the strongest I've seen. And or do you get that feeling as well?
Yeah, I think everyone talks about with startups, you kind of like talk about like the kind of hype to substance ratio.
Right. Little Gartner hype cycle in there,
exactly,
right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think that there's always been a lot of enthusiasm.
Yeah.
And I think that as there's more successful companies and all that, I think that the substance, kind of the talent pool continues to go up. I think that when you have really big success stories, those kind of grow out and become, and I think everyone becomes a bit more savvy. Everyone's a bit more. I think among our readership, I think people are just a bit more. I guess I would just say more savvy, right?
Yeah.
They're just a little bit like kind of questioning things more,
Yeah.
which I think is a
Maybe
really positive
more
move.
skeptical.
Yeah.
Right. Just a little more skepticism, like just because you have a great idea and a website doesn't always mean it's going to turn into a business, right? A little more skeptical.
And I think, obviously people throw around the word traction a lot, but I think what we really want to see is, okay, real users, real dollars, that kind of stuff. Like, and I think even in the venture capital level, people are, I think obviously everyone's really excited to see venture capital. At the same time, you have a lot of people that say, well, okay, yeah, venture capital is awesome, but it's also kind of debt, right? Like debt, like here's people you got to pay back.
Right.
So I think that nationwide, right? So looking at Silicon Valley and all that kind of stuff, everyone talks about kind of this correction of venture capital kind of pulling back and all that kind of stuff. I think that our region is in a really great position because we have a culture that's more of a bootstrapping culture, and also a more like revenue hard dollar culture. I think both investors and business people here are much less speculative.
Are you saying more realistic, Ryan?
Yeah,
is that
like,
what you're saying?
more attuned with reality.
Yeah.
So I think that we're in a really good position as a region. I think to both weather this and also be really attractive to people outside the region that are looking for like, okay, maybe some of the air is coming out of a lot of the hype. So,
well, and the cost is so much different here, especially in Omaha. Your ROI, that just because the costs are so much less, your ROI calculations change so much faster when it talk about making that profit or getting to profitability, right? You just don't have that overhead.
Yeah. You're not. Exists. I mean, even if Kansas City is also a great example of you got these places where you're not going to spend millions of dollars just to have an office, right?
Right.
Like, you're just be people that these kind of crazy expensive and people, and that's where we get a lot of the national attention.
Yeah,
is when the rent prices go up in a lot of these big cities. People are like looking at the grass is kind of greener.
Yeah, we had Victoria on here. We talked about the Exchange building. There's even some opportunities when we think about what AIM is doing. Of course, you're in the building as well, and so you see some of this, and so some collaboratives right there where costs are reasonable and low. So just some great opportunities. Right, from that standpoint.
For startups, they have certain kinds of needs where, you might say, okay, do I really want to lock into a year-long lease, a 2-year lease when I don't know what's happening the next 3 months, right? So having those flexible options is a big part of that.
No, excited to see the UNO Foundation step in as well and help with that. I mean, I'm excited about what's going on in Omaha. It seems like the pieces are coming together nicely. And I even think about some of the work that the zoo is doing with the UNO and some of the work that the chamber is doing out there with everybody in the startup community. It's great with AIM. There's just some great pieces, and our STEM ecosystem is coming together. We are literally a month or two away from hiring a STEM ecosystem manager or coordinator, whatever we want to put, a person whose job it will be to help ensure that a lot of the STEM activities, not regulate them, but make sure that they're happening in coordination. And we as a company are excited about that because that
Yeah.
gets us better resources, So
Yeah, and you just need advocates, right? You need
Yeah.
someone who's going to be there at the table, who's when there's important decisions being made, who's at the table that's making those decisions.
Yeah.
For sure.
Ryan, a lot of the exciting news that you see when we think about startups in this community come across your desk.
Yeah.
What have you seen recently that you just kind of went, wow, this is really cool?
I would say, I think that all the precision ag stuff is just like super fascinating to me. I think a lot of I think that there's a lot of cool companies that are doing stuff along with that. One company that I always have in the back of my mind is what's happening with Acuvera. They've been kind of under the radar mostly, but I think that what's going on there is really exciting. I think that looking at Score Vision, I think Score Vision's got a really strong team of kind of veteran entrepreneurs and kind of stuff like that, and really kind of taking kind of high school sports and kind of small college sports, but really like finding that data. Where's kind of the data play in that? Like, how can you kind of give that kind of like professional experience to these kind of smaller venues and stuff. So I think there's a lot of really cool opportunities there. Obviously, probably the truly world changing stuff is usually like the payment processing, right? So like if you can change the way people exchange money in any way, like you're talking about, billion-dollar markets, international, play. So, but often that's not the most exciting thing, right?
Yeah.
It's not the most. So that's usually, maybe doesn't get the most attention. But I think particularly our region with Des Moines, Omaha, Kansas City, a lot of stuff going on with insurance, banking, investing, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Sure.
you ran an article, and I think, is this Lawn Hero? Is that
Lawn Hero? Yeah.
Lawn Hero out SiliconPrairieNews.com, and that hero is spelled Hiro, so LAWNHRO.
Yeah.
I found this fascinating because I'm a guy who loves to mow my own lawn.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to hire the Uberization of lawn mowing, is going on, and so a little startup coming around of being able to connect lawn mowers to lawns that need to be mowed, right?
Yeah. I think there's always like there's little like Uber for lawns is this idea that keeps popping up various places. There was recently like a pitch competition in Wichita that was a very similar kind of company, like this kind of how do you kind of this lawn mowing on demand. How do you make that work? So I think it's a concept that's there. I think what I like about Lawn Hero is they're interested in connecting with using Zillow's data that's already there. So what can you already learn about people's, houses, locations, all that kind of stuff, use that as a platform. So I think that there's something exciting about that too. And so someone's going to crack the code on Uber for lawns. Like someone's going to,
well, it's
wants
always this connecting,
So,
and in the lawn business, there's always the snowplow business, right? Here in Nebraska, if you own a lawn business, you push snow in the winter. That's just kind of the way it works for a lot of people. That is also a industry that is kind of ripe for, because I don't think the average consumer necessarily knows how to get that done unless they go with a big lawn service and I don't need I don't need that.
Right.
But you might just need your lawn mowed once, right? And I think this is thing, and that Uberization of it is being able to taking that need, putting it with someone who can do it, and then making that thing happen in a transaction that's simple.
Right.
I think that's the magic of Uber.
Right? Yeah. And I think there's also a part of it too is the way in which, and you see this with like Jet and things like that, where you can change the price, where people can find a price that works for them.
Right.
So maybe like if you want your lawn,
the service adjusts.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that in so many, we're really seeing, particularly also with retail, with like commercial local retail, there's so many startups now that are trying to figure out how do you do marketing for those small local businesses using kind of these new technologies, these new ways of thinking about that. How do you do that kind of small business retail? So I think that people talk about kind of like the Amazon for local businesses, right? Like how do you give the average small business owner the power and all the tools and all of that, all of the data and all that kind of stuff? How do you make that for those small enterprises? So I think, there's a lot of people trying to figure it out. I think that it's what I always find in startups is that if it's easy or obvious, there's a ton of people trying to do it. So it's highly competitive. So you either got to find something that's very obscure that no one's thought of, which is really hard, or you have to solve a hard problem, which is also really hard. Right? So I think that's kind of it's fun to watch.
Well, no one said it would be easy, right?
The fun thing about my job is I just get to watch, right? I just get to watch other people do really hard work and get a report on it. So it's
watch and report.
Yeah.
Which you guys now are, I think there's something new coming out every single day. Yeah. Maybe two or one a day. Talk to me a little about what's exciting, what's going on at Silicon Prairie News. Yeah. That you can share.
Yeah. With Silicon Prairie News, I think we have a lot of, we're always trying to expand our reach and expand our coverage. So finding new ways to do more content. I think that that's true for any online media site. Like, how do you put out more content? And so we're always looking for new opportunities to do that, new partners to find for that. We're also, I think that, and this is a little bit more long-term, but a lot of the larger projects that we're working on is how do we provide kind of really better data and more kind of statistics and kind of just like hard research on a lot of the stuff going on in the region. I get approached all the time with people say like, hey, give me a list of like the top 50 startups in the region or whatever, or people that even just media outlets. So national media approaching SPN and saying, kind of tell us the story, like give us the hard facts on it. And so I think that there's a lot of people that want answers to those questions. So I think that's kind of stuff we're interested in digging more into. And this kind of connects with what I was saying earlier about people being more savvy, right? So like people don't just want the hype. They want to know kind of, okay, what's actually going on in terms of investment, in terms of startups, in terms of hiring, in terms of all these things, kind of what are the real numbers here. So we got a lot of cool opportunities for that. I think it'll be a lot of fun. Yeah,
it's been from both the Gallup standpoint. It's been fun. I've kind of plugged in because we're big in the entrepreneurial space with our entrepreneur profile 10 that we have out there. But it's been fun. I get your regular daily update. I've subscribed to it. It's Silicon Prairie News. Just shows up in my inbox. And I kind of see what you're talking about every day. It's super helpful. Are you seeing more and more readers signing up for that kind of subscription model?
We add, you have net new subscribers every single day. So just like incredible growth on our email list has been really good. But I think we grew our email list about 40% last year. So it's a huge boost for us. So
well, I love the partnership with AIM that you guys have in the work that you're doing there. I think it's a perfect fit. We had Victoria in here earlier, and we were just trying to kind of going through all the stuff that's happening in the Omaha community, and it's a little magical right now. The planets are really lining up in Omaha nicely. Everybody's playing nicely in the sandbox, and walls are coming down, and both startup and large enterprise are working together. It's a fabulous no surprise that hopefully rising tides float all boats, right? Hopefully you're seeing some of that too.
I think AIM, the way I think of AIM sometimes is it's like the hardware that sometimes you don't see. So you have this like all this really cool stuff happening at the Exchange building, really cool stuff happening with SPN, with Big Omaha, like all this really cool startup stuff that's going on. And behind all that, like AIM is kind of powering that. And so it's been really exciting.
No, I'm super excited. So. They quietly behind the scenes are just driving. And I really like that. It's kind of they're kind of a neutral. They're kind of like the neutral party,
right?
Who can come in and do some of these initiatives without it being one of the big organizations or one of the universities, or right.
Right.
And so I think we're lining
Yeah.
things up
I
nicely.
think, to me, what's really cool when I look at other startup communities, and just tech communities in general, the ones that really seem to take off and really seem to like get some growth going are ones where the university and the enterprise sector and the kind of startup techie kind of world, like where they all kind of get on the same page.
Yeah.
And I think that probably for several years, I think Omaha's kind of struggled a little bit with that. Like, okay, where does like UNO fit in with everything else? Where does the chamber kind of fit in with everything? Where do kind of the companies like Gallup kind of fit in with, other, like with other kind of newer companies and all where do we all kind of like fit in together? And I think it's been a little bit of a dance, but I think that just within the past year, I think you kind of started to see these kind of aligning.
Yeah.
And where do you get talent, get companies, get those public institutions kind of all working together? It's really exciting.
Comes together nicely.
Yeah.
Are we perfect? No, I think we got a lot of work to do, but is it a good model? I think there are some other cities that could take a hard look at Omaha, that are the size of Omaha, that maybe didn't think they could do some of these things and maybe take the best. I know we look around the country all the time. I'm a part of those boards that look around the country to see how other bigger cities are doing it and what's the best of it,
right,
and pull those in. So I think we got an opportunity. All right, let me shift gears majorly here real quick as we kind of come to a close. No headphone jack in the iPhone 7. Big deal, not a big deal.
Well, I mean, I think what's funny is like they've done it before. Like they've taken away things from us before.
I know they have,
and we all seem to get over it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it all goes back to kind of like Jobs's thing where, or I guess it goes all the way back to Henry Ford. Like, if you ask people what they wanted a faster horse. People don't know what they want. You have to show them what they want.
Right.
So I think it's probably a sign that I don't know, that I think the design people at Apple are still kind of pushing the envelope, and so I think it'll always be.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to lose my headphones all the time.
Well,
then I hate the wires anyway.
I know, I can't keep a pair of earbuds. I lose those too. I think it will push us to think differently about Bluetooth. I think it'll make Bluetooth in the end better.
Yeah.
I think Bluetooth's kind of gotten a pass for the most part.
Right.
It's like, it kind of is and it kind of isn't. And it kind of works sometimes and it doesn't work others. And nobody really cares because I'll just plug in. Right. And this kind of forces the masses. Now, I don't see Android changing this anytime soon. Maybe they'll surprise us and follow.
Yeah.
But I think it will be one of those things that drives innovation a little bit. I like it, I hate it, and I like it all at the same time. I hate it because it's going to force me to get a pair of expensive Bluetooth.
Right.
Now, that'll drive the price down, right? It won't be long before we see inexpensive Bluetooth stuff coming out that's of good quality. It will be really telling to see what Android does, what Google does on this, and if they seem to follow. They've gone USB-C on all their hardware.
Yeah.
That hasn't necessarily translated everywhere yet. It might, although we're seeing more USB-C, right, than we've ever seen. So
and I think too with the Bluetooth too. I mean, I think there was maybe this is old now, but like there was kind of that like people that have a Bluetooth headset, like a kind of reputation of like what those kind of. And so I think that you have like with Google Glass or whatever, where are you going to have that problem where people walking around talking and you're just like, oh yeah, they're
well, and some of the newer Bluetooth earbuds separate, and I mean they are hidden in there, and like you just don't know, and that's a good point. I think I think my listeners on Home Gadget Geeks will weigh in on this for sure,
right?
Because they'll be like, no, I don't want to talk to somebody who's got those where I can't see it.
Yeah, I lived in Chicago for a few years, and I know that it was like you can always like it was always like who are the crazy people on the street? Like who's the crazy person? Like you have these people standing on the corner, just talking to themselves, or people at a bus station just going off, and like they're just like talking, and you're just like, what is
super loud, super pretentious. it seemed arrogant, right?
Yeah.
So there's almost a cultural barrier to this.
Yeah.
And so there could be some problems. I see what you're saying in the sense that we had that cultural barrier before. Will this break it down, or how will people handle it now? They had that thing in their ear and a little, and you could kind of tell, and you're like, oh, I don't want to talk to that guy.
Right.
Right.
Right,
Are you
yeah.
on or what?
Yeah. So, I mean, that was kind of the thing too with Google Glass was you couldn't tell when someone was
Right.
using it or not using it.
Yeah.
And I think that created this kind of weird vibe that people were kind of like, I don't know what you're doing while I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
So do you reach a point where someone could be listening to something and you have no idea, and then you find out that the whole time they were doing something? There's just kind of that like trust issue, and I don't know.
Yeah.
People want to know if you put, you can put down your phone and your phone's gone, right?
Right.
People, you take out your headphones, I have your attention. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Well, so you're thinking, which I think is good, there's a cultural ramifications to this. It's just not a technology solution. I saw one of the tech pundits take not an old pair, but a newer pair of earbuds that are wired, and she just snipped the wires off. And she's like, look, I just saved myself $150. Right. And there's going to be that, but there will also be this cultural piece that it'll have to get accepted culturally, and how will it be accepted into that? I think we've all gotten used to our phones being here and even being on and even alerting us. That wasn't always the case. I mean, remember when these things were super loud and and they would interrupt conversations. I think we've gotten better at that, and accepted it.
Well, and I don't know if, I'm not an expert, but I think when you look at something like the iWatch, where we have in our culture, wearing watches is something people do.
Yeah.
But also, like, when you look at your watch, it's a signal to you, like, we're done, or I got to move on.
No, I get that all the time.
So how do you?
Right.
I don't know if that affects the way people use it.
It's different. I wear the band, so I have the Microsoft band. One, it's quieter. One of the things I love that watches have brought is quieter notifications, because they buzz on they don't have to, these things turn. You might as well have the ringer turned on, right? A vibrating phone, right?
Even if it's in your pocket.
So you could totally hear it. You totally hear it. But with a watch, nobody ever hears my watch. But you're right, overcoming, and with the band, I'm not wearing it today, because I didn't want to be interrupted by it. Like during the interview, I'm like, But you're right. What I have to tell people sometimes, like I'll do this one time, and they'll go, "Oh, do you need to go?"
Right.
And I'll say, "My watch sends me notifications. It's just going to buzz from time to time."
Right.
And that seems to get people past that. Like, I'm not ignoring them. It would just be like checking the notification on my phone. Sometimes, now, if it's a really important conversation, you just stop looking. Right. But if it's a casual conversation, I'm finding more and more acceptance in that area where people kind of know you're distracted.
Right.
Shoot, I don't even know I have a text message unless it comes in on my watch, because I've turned my phone completely off. There's no, and in most cases when I'm with people, I put it down like this. So because I can feel it, coming in.
Well, I think with every new technology, people will figure out how to manage it, where you have, like when email first came along, way back in the 90s, like they would hire email managers to like help people understand, like, how do we, so we come up with more tools, we come up with ways, how do we manage email? I think with notifications, like everyone's got to figure out, okay, what notifications are essential? What levels of different notifications do I want? What do I want to ring? What do I want to buzz? What do I not want to hear about?
That's so hard.
And you gotta, so
as a user, I literally get a notification every minute. On my phone. Every minute. And then I have to think, well, what do I want to be notified on and what don't I want to be notified on? And then I got to go in and change those. And there's these levels of granularity on changing them. I just don't. I let them all go through and kind of deal with it.
Well, then we go back and forth between complexity and simplicity. So like when Google came around in the 90s, right? It was just like this awesome experience. It's just a search box. It's not a web portal with like a bajillion links on it and ads everywhere. It's just simple. Very simple. And so I think that we go back and forth with that, right? So now I got tons of apps all over my phone and stuff, and I want something that's very simple that just clarifies everything.
Yeah.
So
Which Microsoft tried to do with Windows Phone, by the way, right? They tried to bring everything into services.
Yeah.
So you had a social service
Right,
and a people hub and these kind of hubs.
Right.
And it may have been, it was either too late or too early because everyone rejected it. None of the Facebook or Twitter, nobody would integrate with it. They wanted their own, right? They want people to come to their own sites, right?
Right.
Until the consumer demands that. I don't know if we'll ever get simpler until the consumer goes, I'm not going to your site anymore because I can't handle all the notifications you send me. So interesting. Well, it's I think yesterday's announcement, and some people will be watching this in a time shifted manner. It'll be way after the fact, but I think it was just yesterday, right? Today's Wednesday. The watch, I don't see that. I think they iterated on the watch, and it's not that big of a deal. And we have a phone that doesn't have a jack, right? And a few other things on it, but I'm not sure there was much innovation that went on. I don't know. Any thoughts?
Yeah, no, I mean, I mean, I think they're still huge.
Yeah.
So like Apple's still like hugely massive and hugely profitable. So I don't know how long that
how long that gravy train
that lasts, but I guess like with
worked for
Mark
Microsoft
Zuckerberg
for the last
Facebook,
30 years.
I think isn't Facebook's thing is like we want to create the Facebook killer, right?
Right.
And so Facebook wants to create the we want to create it before someone else does,
right?
And I
mean, hard to do.
And they they've acquired Oculus and all that kind of stuff, and so but Apple's just a lot more secretive, I think. So you never know what they have up their sleeve. Is there something else coming? So
cool.
Anyway.
Well, right behind us, they have a HoloLens over there.
Yeah, I've been wanting to
we'll have to check it out. We're going to have them. I'm hoping to get them interviewed here a little bit later today, but we'll have to get over there. And for those watching, I can't reach the camera, but over there, there's a HoloLens.
Yeah, I've tried the Oculus now, and I didn't notice it at the time, but I noticed afterwards I got headaches. But I've heard the HoloLens, because it's a augmented thing, you don't get that same effect. So
I'll
try it.
There's nobody over there, so we'll wrap this up, and then we're gonna head over there. If you're watching this part of the video, we're gonna end the morning session here, and I'll restart things for the afternoon. We have 4 or 5 sessions for you guys this afternoon. If you're listening on the AverageGuy.tv and the podcast, a good update from Ryan. And Ryan, thanks for taking the opportunity to catch up.
Always good to talk to you.
With you as well. And we'll be back after lunch.